Good.
Looking excellent. All right.
What day is it?
Today is, I don't know. We only know based on the book.
We only know based on the book. Let's see. Okay, we are on April 7th.
It must be the 7th.
Happy April 7th. Okay, we know that this month's theme is unbiased thought.
Mm-hmm.
And so April 7th's entry is expect to change your opinions.
I like it.
Yes. Epictetus has a quote for us today. There are two things that must be rooted out in human beings: arrogant opinion and mistrust. Arrogant opinion expects that there is nothing further needed, and mistrust assumes that under the torrent of circumstance, there can be no happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Very cool.
Arrogant opinion expects that there is nothing further needed.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I feel like we were talking about that recently, of the idea that like when we have an opinion on something, sometimes we're like we're closed off to new information on it, and we only have this very small bit of information, but somehow we are convinced that this is all the information I need to know that this art is bad, or whatever the opinion happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
So arrogant opinion expects that there is nothing further needed. Did you want to say something about that part?
No, it makes sense. Yeah. It's like that's the definition of arrogance. He's like, hey, I already know everything.
Yeah.
Like that's like the best flavor of arrogant.
The most chocolatey flavor.
Most chocolatey flavor of arrogant.
Cool.
Yes.
And I like this mistrust part. I've never heard mistrust defined before, and certainly not this way. Mistrust assumes that under the torrent of circumstance, there can be no happiness.
Right, so that's the opposite of I see it as the opposite of the first one, right? Of arrogance. It's like this misunderstanding that there cannot be happiness, there's just arrogance. You know what I mean?
Arrogance, you mean like the way that he's saying torrent of circumstance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like he's saying, like how it's like inside of me is like arrogance is sometimes needed or something. You know what I mean? Like don't like recognize the bad things, but don't push them away. Because if you push them away, then you start seeing the whole world as everything is against you, and therefore you can never be happy, because you will always be like, these circumstances are coming to get me, right? So it's like, yes, there's arrogance, but then also there is this other thing that it's like only half the arrogance is only half the recipe. The other ingredients is more of like this being interested in like, in my own arrogance, or like where in just other processes in the world, and not view it in like so negatively, saying that it's only arrogance out there.
Okay. I like what you're saying, and I'm trying to reconcile it with like what Epictetus is saying too. So let me, do you mind if I go to what he's saying, and then we can see how we can bridge it together?
Yeah.
So he's saying there's two things that need to be rooted out in us. Mm-hmm. We need to root out our arrogant opinion, and we need to root out our mistrust. Mm-hmm. So our arrogant opinion, that's clear. then mistrust, it assumes that when we are mistrusting something, we make an assumption in our head that because life is throwing us all of this crazy shit, we can't be happy.
Yeah.
And that's what mistrust is. It's like this idea that like life is terrible and therefore I cannot flourish. I cannot enjoy this or, really participate to the fullest here. And so he's saying we need to root both of these out of ourselves so that one, we're not arrogant and cocky thinking we know everything. And then two, we're capable of handling the torrent of circumstance.
We're not putting ourselves down all the time and all of that. Yeah.
Oh,
like
and
looking at it as exactly what you're saying. I'm just saying yes, what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay, like torrent of circumstance. I'm not like putting yourself down might be a thought that's a circumstance, but like torrent of circumstance, like my child is sick. It could be anything, like whatever we don't choose that life puts in front of us. And there's so many times that it's like, I can't be happy because this bad thing is happening in my life. So is that what you were, okay.
Yeah, like we're putting ourselves down. We're saying to ourselves,
down.
Yeah, we're saying like, my child is sick. I cannot be happy now. I have to be also sad about it.
Okay,
all
so
the
we're
time.
putting ourselves down.
But it's like some other circumstance that like, well, I didn't choose this, right? So should I be happy? It's actually probably better for you to be happy. So the kid is also then happy with you, even though they're sick, right? Like that's what I'm saying. Like don't say like, I cannot do anything. So I just go, I just sit there like this.
I wasn't understanding what putting yourself down means.
Yeah, putting your circumstance down. Putting yourself part of this circumstance, you're saying to yourself, I'm worthless. This whole situation is unresolvable. I cannot be happy because of it, because it's like this, right? That is painting that picture in this very putting myself down, putting the whole thing down. It's more negative. It's more depressing. Like, it's kind of pressing it down versus trying to find something in it that I know that you cannot say, oh, no, don't worry about it. It's all happy. No, that's not what it is. But it's also not all not happy. Like there's something in there that it's like, can we find some new way of interacting where it's actually, we are both enjoying now or something. And now that's the trust that it can exist. Root out your mistrust that cannot exist. Get it out of your system that things cannot be better. Things absolutely can be better. Get that out of your system that they cannot. Okay. Trust the system. Trust that they can be better. It's not how we decide in our minds to say, I had 20 bad circumstances back to back, therefore my 21st one will absolutely 100% be bad.
Yeah. Same
thing, just we're on the same page. We're just kind of talking about
and that's cool. I'm like more curious, like I want to really understand like what you're saying, and like, but I'm not, when you say it out loud, I'm not with you already in the place that you're starting. I'm like catching up to you, so like there's like times when like a phrase or something, I just like don't know what it means in the context of what we're talking about, because I'm not plugged into like that texture inside of you of like where that phrase or word is coming from. Right.
And I'm also like noticing that I am, because I don't have this text in front of me. Like you might hold the book and you just kind of like glance down at it, and now you see different way how those words are connected, and you see it a little differently. Now I only heard it, and so I'm taking it from what I heard and what I now remember that I heard, right? And now I'm trying to come up with something. It will, of course, it will, and it will be differently understood, of course, right? But even differently than if I had the book and I was looking at and had a chance to glance more in it, maybe I would be not going so abstract out or something, because sometimes I feel like I try to take it as far as I can, as quickly as I can or something, you know what I mean? And
I just want to know where you are. Like, I'm just trying to go along with you, And then I'm cool with it either
Yeah,
way.
same
But
here.
if
Whatever you're saying, I'm trying to also,
right.
kind of get your point, like what you're trying to say.
Of
with it.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you want to use the book, you can just take it from my hand.
Yeah,
too.
understood. Thank you. Yeah, and I could. I'm not saying that I want to. I'm just saying like it's a different thing to hear it versus see it or something. Yeah.
Yep.
I like it actually. I like that I have to understand something just from spoken word. It's like a different mechanism. I don't see those words, right? Like I'm not seeing the words. I'm seeing the meaning of them or something. It's like different, different. A little different.
Do you feel good about the quote?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do Ryan now. How often do we begin some project certain we know exactly how it will go? How often do we meet people and think we know exactly who and what they are? And how often are these assumptions proved to be completely and utterly wrong? This is why we must fight our biases and preconceptions, because they are a liability. Ask yourself, what haven't I considered? Why is this thing the way it is? Am I part of the problem here or the solution? Could I be wrong here? Be doubly careful to honor what you do not know, and then set that against the knowledge you actually have. Remember, if there is one core teaching at the heart of this philosophy, it's that we're not as smart and as wise as we'd like to think we are. If we ever do want to become wise, it comes from the questioning and from humility, not, as many would like to think, from certainty, mistrust, and arrogance.
Yeah, that was cool. There were a few questions in there that, like how many times have you ran a project that ended up being the way you planned it? The answer is 0, right? So it's it never goes the way you plan it.
Yeah.
It could go like you. I guess I'm praying for please be as close as possible to how I planned it, but it's never like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's completely off.
Yeah. And with that question, he's really showing you that this happens all the time. It happens all the time.
So mistakes happen all the time.
Mistakes or
misalignment or some misalignment between plan and actual reality.
Sure, yes. And potentially the reason why that's happening is because I'm assuming I have more information than I have. And so I'm arrogant about certain things, and maybe sometimes I don't even know that I'm arrogant.
Yeah.
It's like it's actually more like there's ignorance too. Because I think ignorance is when you are wrong and you don't know that you're wrong.
Yeah.
Arrogance is when you're you could know that you're wrong, but you're ignoring some things and you're saying fuck this information. I don't need this information. I have the good information already. I know there's other information out there, but I'm choosing to discard it, avoid it, whatever, because this is my pet information and I'm going to make all my opinions based on that. And so he's saying man, this happens all the time. I'm not as smart as I think I am. And that's a really hard pill to swallow. It's an easy thing to think about, but it's a very difficult pill to swallow because it's so embedded in my behavior and my habits to just sort of continue to move forward in this direction without gathering more information first.
Yeah, I mean, we all have this, of course. As much as I want to say, I'm trying to be super careful, so I don't. So I notice those things, right? So I'm hey, we really don't know that. Call out what you don't know. like focus on the, like from project management, like from the known unknowns, and then also visit the unknown unknowns. Be like, hey, I know that I don't know everything. There's this bucket of things that it's unknowable for me or for anyone on this planet, and we just have to still go ahead without knowing that, right? And so that already is humbling your approach, because you're already approaching this thing like, I don't really know. That bucket can show up on my front steps at any point, and now I don't know how to deal with it, right? I couldn't prepare for it. And even if it shows up, you might say, I know how to deal with this, but you might not know how to deal with it. There's always an option that you actually don't know, no matter how confident we are in thinking that we do know. Yeah.
What's interesting is that I feel like I spend a lot of time thinking about all the stuff that I know, and I don't spend that much time thinking about stuff that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if I can somehow like find a way to switch over to like just shift 10% or 15% more of my attention onto what don't I know here? What are the gaps? What if this?
Mm-hmm.
That's even more creative thinking in some way, because you're living more in a state of a question, like
mm-hmm.
instead of a state of the statement.
Mm-hmm.
And so it may even be a more pleasant experience of living, not even for like the Stoic reasons to do this, but just for the reasons of like having better weather in your mind, that it wasn't like I went to therapy and processed a whole bunch of trauma in order to feel like psychologically better about something. It's like I switched how I'm using my attention throughout the day. This is like a hypothesis. Well, maybe we'll see if I can do this.
Well, this reminds me of what you just described. It reminds me of focusing. It's like you said, like most of the time we are mulling over the things we already know, right? And so the focusing there's one of the things, like when the answer comes fast, that's already known by you. So that's not as interesting as to sit in the place of the not knowing and see if there's like something new that comes up that you have never actually thought of. And now you were shifting into more creative. You were saying like it's kind of a creative process to going into, I heard you say the word creative. So like that's I feel like what creativity is, to letting ourselves to be in that place of the, well, I know that I have all this information that already is like really quickly can be recalled. But I'm currently, for this half an hour, I'm more interested in the things that I don't know. So what is it? I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. And so sitting then there with this, I don't know what I don't know, it's almost like a little meditative, but it's different. It's not a meditation, but it's like a different thing, because you're asking those questions. So that's what also you said, you were like asking questions. So that will be the end of it. Like, yeah, you're sitting there asking, hey, what's in there? What's the weather? Well, you said like my weather up here is great, but what's the weather in this whole system? And then not take those quick answers, those answers that we already know. Oh, it's fine, or oh, I'm so my head hurts. Like these quick answers that come from it. Just say, okay, thank you. They come through the fast, and then you say like, I'm waiting for this other signal, and it has to come after I sit in the moment of not knowing anything. So I'm just like, what? I don't know anything. And then there might be something that all of a sudden starts coming from there that is different, and it's different than the stuff that comes very quickly from your mind. So it was just like everything you were describing, I was kind of like, wow, like that's totally the process of kind of the focusing process. So I found it kind of connected to that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it could be cool to add it into your day as like its own standalone activity of just, this is my time to be more in a question kind of state of mind, and more not so interested in data that already exists in my mind, but really opening myself up to all of like the gaps and empty space around the data that I have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sweet. So I guess that's the action item, to try this. And
is that what you're taking from this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just keep being in this. Be okay with the unknown. Perfect.
Well, perfect too. Like, put a ribbon on when you're like sitting talking about philosophy. Not so perfect when it's like, okay, like now I'm waking up and the world is actually a really scary place.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's all much easier said than done, for sure.
Yeah. All right, see you here tomorrow.